We are looking at question 22, which is a colons question, that falls into the broader category of punctuation questions, of which there will be, on your exam, 5 or 6. So before we get into the choices, before we get into the context, let's review what a colon can do. Colons do primarily 2 things. They introduce examples and lists. And unlike a semicolon, they only need one independent clause. An independent clause has to come before the colon, but not after the colon. Whereas for a semicolon, it can only connect 2 independent clauses. Let's take a look at the question. This is pulled from a passage about beavers. Through such initiatives, beaver populations are doing what they do best, semicolon here, engineering healthier, more stable ecosystems. Okay, so this is using a semicolon right now, and it is introducing an explanation. My instinct is to say, okay, a semicolon doesn't belong here, it should really be a comma. Let's make sure, first of all, let's do our check before the punctuation to make sure that the first part is an independent clause. Okay, so through such initiatives, beaver populations are doing what they do best. Okay, so we have our subject and we have our verb. Populations are doing what they do best. That's an independent clause. What's on the other side of the punctuation? Engineering healthier, more stable ecosystems. Okay, I don't actually see a subject here. This is a sentence fragment. And so it would be ungrammatical to have a semicolon here. This is not an independent clause. This is a dependent clause. Another quick way to check if a clause is dependent or independent is to swap out the punctuation with a period. If it works with a period, then it's an independent clause. If it doesn't, it's a dependent clause. So let's go over to our choices. Since the second part of the sentence is a dependent clause, a semicolon would not work here. Choice B, swapping out the semicolon with an M dash. M dashes are typically used in pairs on the SAT, so I'm going to say no. That would be used for an aside rather than introducing an example. And C is a colon. It is introducing an example. Choice D is a comma, and commas don't really introduce examples in the same way that colons do. So really, your best choice is C. Another top tip to look out for is watching out for redundant introductions of lists. So for example, there are word transitions that introduce lists that can be used in conjunction with commas. Like, you could say, he loved fruits. And you could do colon, mangoes, cherries, and limes. That's a perfectly good use of a colon. But you could also use an introductory phrase like such as. He loved fruits, comma, such as mangoes, cherries, and limes. What would not be appropriate is a colon or a semicolon. He loved fruits, colon, such as mangoes, cherries, and limes. This is redundant. It's unnecessary. So be on the lookout for words like such as, specifically as it deals with colons and lists. So that's your checklist. If it introduces an example or a list and there is at least one independent clause, then the colon might just be the punctuation that you need.